On today's episode of the Ag Irrigation Collective, we're going to visit about surge irrigation. Stick around. Hi, I'm Wes Schaefer, your host with the Ag Irrigation Collective. We're going to visit about surge irrigation today, which is a less common form of flood irrigation. There's been several studies done on it. A lot of people are unfamiliar with it, and I wanted to cover it in the podcast today to be able to better inform the general public about surge irrigation. The study that we're going to take a look at today comes out of the University of Nebraska, Lincoln, out of their irrigation engineering department, and they put this together. I'll have a link, of course, to this in the description of the video and on the podcast here that you can refer to. There are a couple of graphical type of charts that are referred in this paper that are kind of neat to look at, that kind of show the cycle of this surge irrigation. So take a look at that when you get a chance and click into the description there. But this is mainly based out of Nebraska. So in Nebraska, there's about 2 million acres of furrow irrigation. And some farmers are switching from furrow irrigation to center pivot irrigation, to reduce on labor costs and to improve their irrigation performance, because, of course, there's been several studies shown of how we can improve our water efficiency use and putting water exactly where we need it with pivot irrigation, as well as other forms of advanced technological type of irrigation. But flood irrigation is still heavily used. So with surge irrigation or surge flow intermittently, you apply water to an irrigation furrow, and the continuous flow for the entire irrigation set is a normal process of flood irrigation. Well, surge irrigation, it was first studied as a method for reducing the amount of runoff that occurred during flood irrigation. And it was then during that process to try and eliminate the runoff that it was discovered that the water that moved to the end of the field when it moved more quickly to the end of the field when it was applied intermittently. And in this paper, it kind of describes how that goes, and we're gonna brush through this here. Water can be applied intermittently by cycling irrigation water between basically two sides of a surge valve. Before development of the surge valve, water was cycled when it was not getting to the end of the field. Then the irrigator would move on to subsequent sets down the line and return in 1 or 2 days to finish the first set. The second time, the irrigation water would be moved all the way to the end of the field because the soil surface had become sealed, and more water was then available to flow past it and continue on to the end of the field. The same process is used with modern surge irrigation, except the cycling is done automatically instead of going back in a day or two. Usually it's for short durations of time, between 20 minutes and 2 hours, and typical surge irrigation system is shown in a chart there that you can click through and take a look at. It's pretty neat little drawing that they've come up with. So surge irrigation works when it first contacts the soil in an irrigation furrow. The infiltration rate is high, meaning that water goes down quickly. As the water continues to run, the filtration rate at the point of the furrow is reduced to a near constant rate. If the water flow is then shut off and allowed to infiltrate, the surface soil consolidate and form a partial seal in the furrow. When water is reintroduced to the furrow, the intake rate can be reduced due to its partial sealing action. The result is more water movement down the furrow and less infiltration in the soil. High infiltration rates can lead to poor irrigation system performance due to deep percolation and poor water distribution across the field. Surge flow can increase irrigation performance by providing a more uniform application. The infiltration pattern of surge and continuous flows show the potential difference in uniformity of water application between the two different systems, and there's another chart within this document showing that as well. Rather than turning the water on and off to achieve the intermittent flow, this is where the irrigation surge valve comes in, and it's used to alternate the flow between open gates on either side of the surge valve. Cycle times used with surge valve irrigation vary with soil texture, so that's important, slope, and your length of your field. So there's several different variables that you need to take into consideration with your surge rates on this. Fine textured soils, which would be kind of clay type soils, less sandy soils, they respond less to surge irrigation than do coarse textured soils that have higher initial intake rates. If field slope is too steep, then it will cause a rapid rate of advance, which means that water's flowing too quickly down the field. And the effects of surge irrigation then, of course, will be reduced. If a soil's intake rate is low due to soil texture, tight soils, or compacted layers, surge irrigation is likely to be ineffective in reducing the irrigation advance times below those for continuous flow. So it really is soil type dependent if this is going to be effective or not. Surge flow has been used in some cases to reduce irrigation runoff by using short duration cycles after the water has reached the end of the field. This helps maintain high uniformity of water applications and improve the overall irrigation performance. Another advantage of surge irrigation, unrelated to improvements in irrigation system performance, is that the surge valve can be used to improve irrigation management without a large increase in labor requirements because it is set up on an automatic type system. And a surge controller then provides a two-set automated furrow irrigation system. There's two potential drawbacks or limitations, though, on surge irrigation. That the first being the surge flow, it may not always reduce the advance time of the water down the furrow. If it does not, there may still be benefits of labor savings and runoff reduction. Because infiltration rates are often lower with surge flow, a second concern of the limitation is with net water application. If infiltration rates are reduced with surge flow, less water may be stored in the root zone during an irrigation set. If this occurs, the irrigator must compensate by irrigating more frequently or increasing the set time to avoid underwatering. So there is still very heavy amounts of management that goes into this, and really learning more about surge irrigation to know if it's going to be effective on your farm and in your irrigation practices. Proper irrigation scheduling may become even more important when surge irrigation is used. And that irrigation scheduling, there's quite a lot of software available now. In a previous podcast, we did discuss some irrigation type scheduling stuff in regards to soil moisture monitoring and soil moisture probes. So this scheduling, by way of having a piece of software help you with that scheduling, could be beneficial here, I would think, as well, utilizing some soil moisture probes out in some of this surge irrigation. Proper field leveling is also important when surge irrigation is used. Many irrigators that either have low spots or reverse grades, of course, have observed water ponding and infiltration in these low areas to the extent that advance times are actually increased. Well, that makes sense. This has been observed more often on coarse textured soils than it has on fine textured soils. Of course, some touch-up in grading to eliminate backslopes may be necessary as some management in your practices. Some of the required equipment that is necessary for surge valve irrigation is normally a surge valve with an automated controller. Costs you anywhere between $1,500 and $2,500. Of course, depending on the size of the valve and the controller options that you choose to utilize. Using a surge valve often requires that somewhere on the system, pipe is used to convey water to the desired location of the valve. Lay flat or disposable plastic tubing may be a low-cost alternative to that, though, that you can roll up at the end of the season, kind of get it out of the way if you choose not to use pipe. Remember that getting over the field during the first irrigation in half or three-quarters of the time it normally takes may more than pay for a valve in a single year. The inability to automate The inefficiency of furrow irrigation causes some furrow irrigators to apply more than twice the amount of water than a crop can use. That's a pretty big waste of water that we could either be utilizing it on other places on the farm potentially, or there's even been some instances that I've seen in drought years that water is cut back to a certain, let's say you have 4 acre feet of water available for the year and they've had to cut it back to 2 acre feet. And if you're able to then utilize that for longer in the season, that can sure be beneficial, and you can irrigate that crop for longer throughout the season. By realizing water savings, enough fuel and labor could be saved to expect the surge system to pay for itself in just a few years on somewhat of an ROI, if that's something there. So surge irrigation, it does provide farmers that use furrow irrigation an opportunity to irrigate more effectively. By reducing infiltration rates, surge irrigation allowed smaller applications, which can improve irrigation performance. Reducing deep percolation may reduce the potential for chemical leaching to the groundwater. And also, surge irrigation can help reduce runoff losses and can assist in your labor management. The effects of surge irrigation are most prevalent during the first irrigation when the soil intake rate is high. Although intake rates decrease as the season progresses, the advantages of surge continue in the ability to manage water supplies by keeping water on the field and minimizing the amount of runoff leaving the field. The application of surge irrigation will require a change in management strategy. It's really going to take a shift and adjustment for you as the irrigator and the farmer and the landowner to do things a little bit differently. Surge irrigation often allows the irrigator to apply water more uniformly as well as effectively. As a result of improved irrigation performance with surge flow, soil water monitoring will be more important in assuring that adequate water is applied and that effective irrigation is reduced. So that is one thing too, that we can utilize some of this technology even in flood irrigation to monitor our root zone water depth and make sure that you're getting your crops adequately watered, as well as not overwatering them by way of using too much additional water. There is a neat tool also that I saw this last summer of a grower in flood irrigation was using, I don't remember the name of it. I will have to find it, and I can put a link to it in this as well. But it was a piece of technology for flood irrigation that he was using that basically would ping his phone when that water got to a certain point in the field. Just a basic water sensor that's attached to, whether it be a Verizon modem card. There was a subscription on it, I believe a monthly or maybe a yearly subscription. And based on that, it would then ping him when it was, say, 2/3 of the way down the water, and he could either go and turn that water off manually or know just when that water would be done to avoid that runoff as well. So there's several practices. There's a little bit of technology involved with some of this stuff that is kind of neat, and just some things to consider with some technology, even within flood irrigation. So that's going to wrap up today's episode of the Ag Irrigation Collective. Be sure on YouTube to subscribe if you're watching from there, and if you're not, maybe jump over to YouTube and take a look at us there. The video I produce is nothing special by any means, but it does offer you somewhat of behind the scenes of me recording a podcast. So we sure appreciate you stopping by today. We'll catch you on down the road.